Just a little bit.
Yes.
Just a little.
Present tonight. The report will be at March 18th.
That was you.
Absolutely.
That's what it was.
Look how light they are.
You ready? Everyone's ready?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, good evening, guests and community members. The Montgomery Township Board of Education open public session will reconvene at this time, and it is 7:40 p.m. On behalf of our Board of Education members, the superintendent and her cabinet, we welcome you to our first of two open public meetings this month, Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. Roll call, please. Acting Board Secretary Palumbo.
Sure. Mr. Carlson. Ms. Dowling.
Here.
Ms. Felak. Ms. Franco Herman.
Present.
Ms. Harris.
Here.
Ms. Spina.
Present.
Mr. Todd.
Here.
Ms. Wallach-Jernigan.
Here.
And Dr. Spence Wallace.
Present. Everyone, please rise for the flag salute.
Which is now here.
I
panicked when I didn't see it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone, please be seated. So we'll allow the record to reflect that there will not be an MTSD student representative report by Ryan Wallace, and that will take place at our Tuesday, March 28th, 2023 meeting. And now we will move to our superintendent's report and presentations at this time. Superintendent McLaughlin.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight there's three presentations. Two have to do with, one with the student safety data system report and the other with our HIV report. I'm going to report out now on the student safety data system report for the period 1, which is September through December of 2022, the first half of the year. So it's part of the New Jersey Department of Education requirement to submit the student safety data system report information. And tonight we're reporting out on period 1, which for the 22-23 school year. At the high school, there were 13 total incidents reported, with the majority reported under the category of substances. Other incidents included fighting and HIV alleged. At upper middle school, there were 18 total incidents reported, with most incidents falling under the category of both HIV alleged and HIV confirmed. At lower middle school, there were 13 total incidents reported, with the majority under the category of HIV alleged. At Village Elementary School, there were 14 total incidents reported, with the majority reported under the category of HIV alleged. At Orchard Hill Elementary School, there were 7 total incidents reported, with the majority falling under the category of HIV alleged. I would now like to welcome Ms. Stacy Young to report on the harassment, intimidation, and bullying investigations, trainings, and programs for period 1. Report.
question on the student report.
Yes.
At the high school, it was outside of just HIV. Are those other incidents, is that something that the Board of Ed can get information on, what incidents occurred at the high school outside of HIV?
Just the numbers of them?
I mean, if it's violence, I think the board should be notified of what those incidents are, right?
So they would be on the monthly suspension reports that we have. It says what they're for, or if asked, I can tell you what they're for. So the high school, like I said, had 13 total incidents, and most of them were for substances, which is drugs, alcohol, things like that. And then the other ones falling into the other category of fighting and alleged HIVs. So fighting could be physical, and fighting could also be verbal.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hi everyone, good evening. Stacy, I'm Director of Equity, Data, and Accountability, in addition to serving as the district's anti-bullying coordinator. Tonight I'm here to share on harassment, intimidation, and bullying, or HIB, investigations, trainings, and programs, or ITP, for period 1, which falls between September and December of 2022. This is a state-required presentation. In the presentation, I'll be covering the definition of HIB. I'll be sharing some stats on our investigations, trainings, and programs in that 4-month period, and I'll end on sharing who can report and how to report. So beginning first with the definition, which is really important to go over because we tend to use the more colloquial use of bullying, so it's important that we understand bullying according to the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act, which is New Jersey state law. So what exactly constitutes HIB? Well, it can be a gesture, a written, verbal, or physical act, or an electronic communication, whether it be a single incident or a series of incidents that's reasonably perceived as being motivated by either an actual or a perceived characteristic, and you can see them listed there. Some of those characteristics include race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, mental, physical, or sensory disability, or really any other distinguishing characteristic. In addition to this, an incident will constitute HIB if it takes place on school property, at a school-sponsored function, on a school bus, or off school grounds, and if it substantially disrupts or interferes with the orderly operations of the school or the rights of other students, and that includes the right of the target or the victim themselves. And in addition to that, a reasonable person should know under the circumstances that the act or acts will have the effect of at least one of the following: physically or emotionally harming a student or damaging the student's property, or placing a student in reasonable fear of physical or emotional harm, or has the effect of insulting or demeaning any student or group of students, or creates a hostile educational environment for the student. So in order for an incident or incidents to constitute HIB, it needs to meet all of those different prongs. Our schools are required to have anti-bullying specialists, which you can see listed on the right-hand side of the screen there by school. You'll recognize these names. These are also our counselors, and they serve as anti-bullying specialists, or ABSs as well, and they do a phenomenal job of it. Our anti-bullying specialists are responsible for conducting the HIB investigations, in addition to chairing their building, school safety, and climate teams, and they support and/or lead trainings and programs on HIB in their buildings as well. They're qualified to do this because they do receive mandated training annually in HIB law, the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act, in our policy and our protocols, and on conducting interviews and investigations. Districts are also required to have an anti-bullying coordinator, which is the role that I'm currently fulfilling. And an anti-bullying coordinator is responsible for collaborating with the anti-bullying specialists, with the Board of Education, with the superintendent to prevent, identify, and respond to the HIB of our students in the district. The anti-bullying coordinator is also responsible for providing HIB data to the New Jersey Department of Ed and meets twice annually with the ABSs, again, to discuss policy, practices, protocol, etc. Taking a look then at some numbers. Again, we're looking at period 1. These are investigations from September to December of 2022. You can see our schools listed on the left-hand side there. That center column are the reported or the alleged HIVs for that period of time. As you can see here, district-wide, we had 40. And then to the right are the ones that are actually affirmed or confirmed to be HIV. So 11 out of the 40 did end up being confirmed as HIV. In In terms of trainings, again, you can see our schools on the left. To the right are the number of trainings per school. Trainings will fluctuate greatly from school to school, from period 1 to period 2, from year to year. It just kind of depends on what that school needs at that time or the capacity they have for training. So those numbers you'll see fluctuate all the time. But you can see here across the district, 37 opportunities to learn about HIV.
And who's getting trained?
Trainings, all of our staff members.
All of the staff.
Mhm. Yeah, so taking a look at some examples of trainings here, you can see here that in terms of the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights or HIP policy, all of our administration and all staff are trained annually on that. We also had some training on creating inclusive and affirming schools, which we know directly contributes to HIV, seen with implicit bias. All of our staff members also participate in online training, GCN training, on cyberbullying, discrimination, suicide prevention, and again, the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. Yes.
Do we provide annual training for parents?
For-
On HIB?
For parents, no.
But they're
Is that
provided
something
the
that-
policy.
They are provided policy,
Yes,
which they have to
signed off.
acknowledge annually.
I
Yes.
do know in years past, as a parent, I attended several HIB trainings. It was offered at Montgomery High School in the auditorium, and as a parent, I found it very helpful. And it seems as if, or Ms. Young, I don't want to presume, but it seems as if there's been an increase in the number of HIB cases, over the years, perhaps, even if it wasn't done annually, maybe biannually. I think it's helpful for parents to be aware of the specificity of the laws, because they wouldn't have that comprehension otherwise. So I think it would be the responsibility of the district to provide that training for parents, if that's something we can at least seriously
May I ask?
consider.
Sorry about that. I was just saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but for PTA, if you want to become a member, isn't there like a brief, I remember doing it, a very brief question, kind of like a quiz you have to do on HIB, at least for, I know the lower buildings, Orchard Hill does it in Village, and it's, it defines what a HIB is, and you have to answer questions, they give some scenarios as well. And I think it's great because it really does clearly explain the difference between a HIB versus just a code of conduct as well.
And there's also annually, and it's going to be at the next meeting, March 28th, Stephen Fogarty is coming to do the HIV training for the Board of Education, which is a public
Okay, great.
training, and that's
We
done every
upload that
single
on
year.
YouTube.
So it's always going to be
Great.
on our recorded board meetings.
But
every
maybe
year.
doing something like, to Zelda's point, doing that question or training for the PTA does do it for everybody. It's
Every
very brief.
session that I attended was very well attended also. Thank you, Ms. Young, I apologize for the interruption.
Okay, taking a look then at programs, these are student-facing opportunities. Again, our schools on the left and the number of programs to the right. And again, these will fluctuate from school to school, from period to period, year to year, just depending on how that school is offering programming. So in some cases, it will be like a whole school assembly. And then in some cases, it'll be classroom visits by our ABSs. So that will affect the numbers that you're seeing there. And here are just some examples of some of that work. Again, I mentioned student assemblies, the classroom visits by our ABSs. I do want to shout out our high school peer leaders. They're fantastic.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you to Mr. Figueroa for leading that work. They go down to our younger that's dedicated for reporting. It's called Hipster. It is right on our district main page, and that allows you to report either anonymously or not. And that concludes the presentation. At this time, I'm happy to take questions from the board.
I have a question.
Sure.
As far as reporting is concerned, well, before I go to reporting, on the previous page you showed the number of different programs that are being shared across the different schools. Has that number increased over the last few years? Are we maintaining similar approach to this?
I think I don't only think it increased, I think it's also changed. and what we've offered based on what we see. So those school safety and climate teams meet a few times a year. They review the HIBs, they review the motivations, they review what was founded and what's not, and then they decide, well, what trainings and what programs can we offer in response to what we're seeing in the reports.
Okay, so that kind of validates what Zelda was saying in regards to making sure parents can also be updated
Sure.
on what changes there are, because I think, you know, having a website that you can anonymously report, you also should understand the fact that there might be repercussions if you do something with ill will or whatever it may be, right? So since there's a lot of changes happening in the policy, I would think that we would want to have parents, as we have to sign off in Genesis that we read,
Right.
the HIB policy, it would be good if we help the parents understand what that means.
Sure. Any other questions?
I was just going to ask, I know we've talked about hipster often, you know. Is there, I know, you know, the last time we talked about hipster, you had also suggested that there may be, or not suggested, but looked into potentially an alternative that could give us a better reporting. I just curious if there is anything out there that exists that's better than hipster or comparable.
There is nothing better.
All right.
Yeah, Hipster is still the best platform for
All right.
reporting.
Thank you, Michelle.
Sure. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I looked up an answer of all the incidents at the high school one fight this entire school year, but well, from September to December.
Thank you. I don't know what I'm more concerned about, the fight or the abuse of the
Well,
business.
remember vaping falls under substances, and there were 6 total, including the fight, so.
All right.
They're not angels. They're all doing the best they can to make the right choice, and we're helping them along.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Palumbo and I are now going to present on the recommended budget for the 23-24 school year. Okay, so here's the agenda for our presentation. We have our budget process, the district goals, the summary of the total recommended budget, major sources of revenue, general fund, local tax levy cap, appropriations by function, major drivers of the budget, personnel adjustments, and major capital maintenance projects, as well as the tax impact and opportunity for questions from the board. So we begin early in the school year. As you can see, in October, we start informing the budget managers. The budget manager are our principals, our directors, and supervisors who all participate in securing the needs of the district, instructional personnel, etc., in the development of the budget. By December, all the requests are due from the budget managers. Then the administrators, which is the cabinet, which is the VA, myself, and the 2 assistant superintendents, meet and review the budget requests with the budget managers. So we have individual meetings with them, and it's ongoing. Sometimes we have multiple meetings with the same budget managers if there's some edits or revisions that we need to take care of. And then March 2nd, as we know, we receive our state aid. This year, we received an additional $1 million from last year. And as you all know, we have just gone out for a public question in November. We're going to have full-day kindergarten for next year. So instead of, we're utilizing the money in 2 ways. We are reducing the tax impact for the budget that we're proposing for next year. And then we're banking $875,000 for the future years to keep the tax impact lower. So it's basically, it's not like a give back, but it's a reduction. It is definitely for the tax impact as opposed to increasing the budget anywhere else. So then we have, on March 7th, the recommended budget was finalized. Tonight, the 10th, we had discussion of the recommended budget with the OFF committee. That was last Friday. And tonight we are doing the presentation of the recommended budget. By March 20th, we have to submit the budget to the Executive County Superintendent for review and approval. And then April 25th is our public hearing on that will be the finalized 23-24 budget and final adoption by the Board of Education. So our budget for next year is aligned with our district goals. As you can see, our goal number 1 for academics, our curriculum writing will include the principles of UDL. Staff development will continue to develop our staff in regard to multiple ways to engage students, providing students with choices, using data to target instruction, and options for students to demonstrate acquired knowledge. And then we have new curricular resources, classroom and digital tools that are purchased to better align the classroom instruction with the UDL principles. Equity, we have new classroom materials in order to increase representation of our underrepresented populations, data analysis software to identify underachieving subgroups and to monitor growth of all students, comprehensive math and ELA assessment softwares to track proficiency and to progress and monitor student achievement above and beyond the state assessments. And our SEL goal. We have our wellness self-care days for students on a regular basis. We have our week of respect, universal screenings for 512, students in grades 5-12 for mental health, staff development for our trauma-informed school-based teams, and professional development materials purchased for the continued implementation of responsive classroom. And our communication goal. One of the personnel items you'll see in a future slide is the position of a communications manager for the district, as well as upgrades in our budget for website and e-blast maintenance services. Mr. Dave Palumbo, our Associate Business Administrator.
All right, so this is the summary of the recommended budget for fiscal year 23-24. You can see that the budget, the general fund is going up 5.17% from the prior year. Current expense is going up 5.24%. This is basically general. This could be an increase in salaries, benefits, and supplies needed to fund the education of the students. Then you have capital outlay. This is all your capital projects that needs to be done or recommended. They include a server, 3D printers, a plow truck, a van, the security vestibules, which we'll talk about later. So those all go into the capital outlay account. And then you see a reduction in charter schools because two students graduated, so the cost went down. Now, if you go to special revenue, you see it's down a lot, 68%. That's due to ESSER funds that are starting to roll off the books, so you don't have them anymore, so that's why your balance in your special revenue funds are going down. Next is debt service. There's a minor decrease of 1.44%. That's due to some debt rolling off the books, so obviously your debt service payment will go down. And to summarize, your total budget went up 1.86%. And is now $112,851,750. Next slide. So this is the major sources of revenue. Of course, the biggest source of revenue is the local tax levy. You can see your general fund taxes went up to $2,089,000, a 2.45% increase. Now, normally you're capped at 2%, but the district has elected to take a healthcare adjustment because of the increase in healthcare costs from last year to this year, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. State aid, again, went up $1.4 million. It was the $1 million additional aid we got, and then extraordinary aid was bumped up $400,000 from the previous year because the amounts we've been getting were higher, so the historical data told us we can budget a little more. And again, debt service went down by 0.27%, and it's gonna be $728,491. Now we get to the reserves. Fund balance, you can see a large increase of $1.6 million. This is due to the funds that we will need to fund full-day kindergarten. We had to receive the funds now, so we can start preparing for next year. This money was put into the reserves, and then next year we'll pull it out and use it for the full-day kindergarten program. Capital reserve, that's where we use for our major capital projects. Again, this is security vestibules and upgrading the playgrounds at Orchard Hill and Village Elementary. And then you have maintenance reserve pulled at 561,500. This is for, maintaining the districts, like the impact, the seats are torn, let's repair that. Various carpeting needs to be repaired, tiles that are broken. It's that sort of upkeep that you pull funds from maintenance reserve. And the next is just a pie chart of the revenue distribution. You can see local tax levies 83.68%, then state aid at 8.8%, reserves at 5.78%, special revenue 1.19%, and then miscellaneous at 0.501%. What makes up miscellaneous is things like...
Next slide.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
And then miscellaneous, what makes that up is interest, things like interest, tuition, and facility use. Now getting to the local tax levy calculation. So the original tax levy for FY23 was 82 million. Then the public approved the spending proposal, so it went up in addition, went up 1.6 million for recurring costs, that's recorded like salaries each year for the full day kindergarten. And then the non-recurring costs, which are making improvements to the building, that was 669,763. So your revised general fund tax levy for this year is 85,206. You reduce the non-recurring costs, so your base budget, your base levy for fiscal year 24 is 84,536,739. The 2% increase that we permitted equals 1.69, and then the maximum adjustment with the adding to that, we could have taken another adjustment of 1.944 for the healthcare cost, but we've elected only to take 1,068,000 with the 875,963 being banked for the next 3 years. They have to be used within the next 3 years. You don't have to use the entire amount. You can do portions each year.
And explain again that that's the state, additional state aid that we received.
That's because of the additional state aid. If we used the entire amount, taxes would have gone up from 2.45 to 3.48.
The entire amount for the health benefit differential, yeah.
So the total recommended tax levy is 87,296,224.
Do you have the split of the taxpayer increase?
It's on the list slide. So now this is a summary by function of the appropriations for next year. You have regular instruction, which includes instructional supplies like technology items, textbooks, and it also includes like teacher salaries and other things. And then you have special education instruction, which went up 0.13%. Again, it's similar to regular instruction, to the supplies, the materials, the textbooks, and the salaries for the teachers. Then you have support services, which went up 1.6%. That's your health services, your nurses, professional development, guidance services, related services, and like media services as well. And then after school programs, this is your extracurricular clubs, and then your athletics. So that went up 6.2%, and that's due to the new agreement with the MTA where the stipends got increased. After that, it's tuition. This is pretty easy to explain. With more kids were going out, so it went up 9.45%.
And tuitions increase each year.
And tuitions go up, usually 3%, but you never know. Next is administration. This is general and school administration. So this is the superintendent's office, the assistant superintendent's office, and their staff. Then you have school administration, which is the principals, vice principals, and their staff. And also like business office and the technology department all included in that. And that actually went down 2.31%. Operations of plant maintenance and security includes your custodial costs, salaries and all your supplies, maintenance, same salaries and supplies, grounds, the upkeep of grounds, the mowing and all of that. And then security, that's going up because we're hiring 3 new safety and security coordinators for next year. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Or?
Yeah, when we get to personnel.
Okay. Next is transportation. That went up because the cost of contracted salaries have skyrocketed with the shortage in drivers. So those costs went up tremendously. And finally, not finally, but the biggest one is employee benefits went up 14.5%. at almost 2.8 million. That's a big driver of this budget. Next, it's capital outlay. Again, that's your, as I mentioned, that's your security vestibules, your facility projects, playgrounds, and door and locks and safety for repairs. Transfer to charter schools, again, that went down because 2 students graduated. Special revenue, that went down because of the ESSER funds. And debt service went down because some debt rolled off the books. And again, this is just a pie chart of the distribution of the appropriations. So now we're talking about the major drivers. As you can see, the biggest drivers are salaries and benefits. Almost 82% of our budget is for salaries and benefits.
Okay, so we have some additions to personnel for next year. I know the number looks odd, but we already have some half positions, 0.48, et cetera. So there's going to be an addition of 0.895 for our performing arts teacher, and that's the salary equated with that. We are going to, we're in need of an additional Spanish teacher at the middle schools, and there's salary listed there. An academic support teacher at LMS. Our STAR program is increasing with the number of students, so we need to increase a clinician, so we're hiring a new psychologist for that program. We also, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to hire a district communications manager, and we also have in the budget for 3 safety and security coordinators. We have a security plan that includes updating and upgrading our vestibules for safety. This year we integrated our visitor management system. Right now we just have a director of safety and security and 1 security position at the high school. Next year we will have 2 positions at the high school, 1 shared between UMS and LMS and 1 shared between Orchard and Village. In addition, an extra security officer is in this budget. And then we have a plan to increase so every building would have their own coordinator. But that's not in this budget. What's there is just the 3 for next year. So we are reducing the budget by a part-time admin assistant, and then the total addition to the budget for next year with all the new staff is the $467,507. This is a recap for the full-day kindergarten. 7 classroom teachers, 1 health PE teacher, a .33 visual performing arts teacher, 1 school counselor, 1 media specialist, 1 clerk, 1 custodian, 6 part-time ESAs, 1 part-time lunch aide, and 2 special education teachers, which equates to a salary of $983,646. Now remember, this is the money that's in reserve that we're going to pull down and put into the salary accounts for this upcoming budget. And the reason why someone might ask why is it not the total amount? This does not include benefits and all the other resources that go into the staff as well as supplies that are ongoing. Okay, you want to take this one?
Okay, so this is a listing of the major capital and maintenance projects funded through reserves. What this does is it doesn't affect taxes. If we pulled it out of reserve, so it doesn't affect the tax rate anymore. It's not a tax burden on the taxpayers. You can see the upgraded vestibules across the district, playground equipment for Orchard Hill and Village, replace the concrete sidewalks perimeter at LMS, and then, like I said, some of the maintenance projects are replacing worn carpeting and tiles at all the schools, and then door replacement, locks, and for enhanced security. All right, so now we get to the tax impact. So the tax rates are based on the total assessed valuations of the town or borough. So here you can see Montgomery's total is a little over $4 billion, an increase of $21 million, 4.54%. The school tax rate went up 0.039 over a total of 1.7. And now the average assessed value of residential house is $506,228, an increase of $406. And with that being with the average assessed value, the tax rate would be $11,682, an increase of $196 for the entire year. or 1.7%. Again, at Rocky Hill, again, the assessed valuation is 156 million. It's up 11 million, which is, and the percentage increase is 7.75. The school tax rate went down by minus 5.8%, and the average residential assessed value is 526,046, an increase of 37,598. The average school tax rate the average school tax for 2023 is 7,179, and for an increase of 101. Now, you may be wondering, if their tax rate went down, why is the payment going up? That's because of the assessed valuation. You can see the assessed valuation for Rocky Hill went up 7%, almost 8%, while Montgomery was 0.54%. Questions from the board?
So back on your, the full day K, you had the salaries for everybody. And then you're saying that the part that's missing beyond the 962,000, 1.6 million, that is in the benefits that were in the previous slide? You said the rest of it was in benefits.
No, the rest of the money that, if you go back, probably easier to show you my paper here. What slide, Dave, did you talk about? No, go back where you first talked about how our reserves has that large number that we had to put in reserves, all the money we had to collect this year for full
right
day
here.
pay.
Yeah. The 1.69?
Yeah, the
1.620.
1.62, right? So that almost $1 million is just salary, and then the rest of the 620 is benefits and supplies that are ongoing for full day care.
And plus additional means that need to be done to the building.
Recurring costs,
Right.
right. I just wanted to point out that people didn't think that. Yeah, I don't know who's going to. Patrick.
Hey, thanks, great presentation. Two questions. How much in ESSER funding do we still have left? Do you know that offhand?
I think a little over $1 million.
And then the second question is, so this tentative budget goes to the county superintendent on March 20th?
Yes,
Correct?
that's why it needs to be.
By March.
By March.
Yeah.
By.
So during their review, what are they looking for?
They look for a connection between our district goals and what's in our budget. They look for increases, anything that stands out. There has to be an explanation for it. You know, any questions that people would have, they're going to have the same questions. Make sure that we have enough in our reserves, all those kind of things.
And in the DOE website, when you enter the budget, anything that's over 2% increase or decrease, you have to have an explanation for it. Same thing with enrollment.
And there's a whole health benefits formula
Yeah.
that they're going to see that we're going under what we could have gone up to. And our explanation is that we got an additional $1 million from the state that we're going to use towards that instead of increasing the taxes.
Thank you.
And I just want to clarify that, I know I talked about this earlier, but the special education funding, you're saying it went up
It did.
0.13%?
Yeah.
So per student, it's still going to go up or stay about the same?
It depends on the enrollment.
So, right.
I don't have the enrollment
Right,
for
if
with the
the
special
enrollment
education.
in special education drops, then it's going to go up.
Right.
If the enrollment increases, then it's going to stay the same or go a
But
little
what
lower.
we're providing them is going to stay the same?
Oh,
Yes,
absolutely,
yes.
yeah, yes.
So one question in regards to the capital improvements. Are we taking a look at each individual schools as far as bathrooms and things that we have to, is that incorporated in? Because I saw some major projects here, like replacement of sidewalks and things like that, but I think within each school, are we evaluating the current situation with the facilities as they exist today and making sure that we're investing in there as well?
Yes, for the budget, I know Mr. Bonanzi walked through the buildings with Mr. O'Neill, the director, and the principals. And then part of the budget discussions were some of those items, what was in the bathroom. And some of those still may be in the regular budget, the local maintenance accounts, and not pulled out. This is only major projects they pull out, something like repairing like a urinal or something like that. It wouldn't fall under here.
Is there any way we could see some of those things that Mr. Venanzi looked at and just as a community, we can see how we're updating the current facilities.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to them and get back.
And then another question I have, could we also see the split of that 1.6 versus 983? Like, what's the rest including? Is it, how is that split? What percentage of it is associated with healthcare benefits? What percentage is associated?
Yeah.
Just some sort of a view of that in a little bit more
We can
detail.
get that.
Thank you.
And I have one more. Part of this plan would be the gifted and talented programs, and I know that they're affected by that. I don't know how we these group together, but would that be affected by this budget? Would be maybe improved by this budget? Gifted and talented programs.
Yeah, we have bolstered our gifted and talented program over the last 3 years. It's part of our instructional program.
No more questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent McLaughlin, Acting Board Secretary Palumbo. Oh, that's so great. Pupils are dilated, so please excuse me. All right, great. So we have reached that part of our agenda for new business from the public. The Board of Education welcomes and values input from the public. Members of the public are allotted one opportunity to bring any new business to the board for up to a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. Point of privilege, thank you. All comments or questions must be directed to the board chair. Before you make your comment, however, please state your name and address and write both in the notebook that's provided on the podium. Being mindful of privacy rights regarding students and board employees and board members, and to avoid any potential liability on the part of the speaker, the board discourages references to specific individuals. While directing your comments or questions to the board chair, please understand that the public comment portions of the meeting are not structured as Q&A sessions, but rather are offered as opportunities for you to share your thoughts with the board. The board chair may need to refer an issue to the superintendent if the particular issue has not been handled through the appropriate chain of command within the school district, starting at the school level. Responses may be provided at the end of this session. There are times when comments or questions will require additional fact gathering before a response is provided. So Acting Board Secretary Palumbo, would you commence with the timer, with the first public comment at this time? Thank you. Remember to state your name and address.
President Spence Wallace, Superintendent McLaughlin, members of the board, my name is Ray Speck. I live on North Street, Belmead. First, I'd like to make a request that you request the public, when they come up, that they be prepared to, the public come up and be prepared to speak as soon as the prior speaker is done. It seems that we've gotten into the habit of almost having the speakers playing chicken, where they want to wait and see who's commented first so that they can comment on the comments rather than making their own comments to the board. And so I think the meeting might flow more quickly if we had either a line or people ready to speak. For the last 2 years, I've attended board meetings and have been struck by the ongoing culture wars that have dominated the comments made at this dais. From COVID to diversity and inclusion to health curriculum to usage of facilities, we have people come up and make comments long past when the issues have been asked and answered. Whether the speaker agrees with the decision of this board or not, saying once again that something like the Drag Queen Story Hour was inappropriate is not going to alter the past. We've gotten to the point where we have people who come up and complain about a topic, and then we have other people who come up and complain about the complaints. It's like kids fighting on the playground at lunch. I'm here to advocate for a third alternative. My proposal is that public comments talk about issues that actually deal with the education of our students rather than the latest rant on Facebook. I'd like to see more discussion about what programs parents would like the board to adopt. I'd like to see more discussion about the disparity in assessment outcomes of different groups of students. I'd like to see more discussion about other proposals such as having later start times at the high school. Finally, I'd like to ask the Policy Committee to consider a change in Policy 0170 on public correspondence in the interest of transparency. Specifically, I saw that another board has a note on their website that, quote, email received by or sent to the board is subject to the Open Public Records Act, OPRA. This means that absent some specific privilege, all such correspondence are considered public record and are subject to publication and or dissemination to the public upon request. I'd like to be able to review correspondence that's sent to the board to understand the concerns of my fellow community members. By letting the public know of this policy, I'm hoping that public comments and correspondence may be more transparent and be available to the public. Thank you.
Could you please repeat the policy number?
0170.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm waiting for the president to...
You may commence. Thank you so much.
With regard to non-responsiveness to public raised issues, I'm still awaiting answers to new questions on my letter to the superintendent. Can you stop the clock then?
Well, listen, you stated your name and your address and you wrote it in the booklet
I'm
there?
sorry, yes,
Thank you.
Janet Church, Montgomery. With regard to non-responsiveness to public issues, I'm still awaiting answers to new questions on my letter to the superintendent dated February 15th, including what the actual cost to taxpayers of the South Africa excursion was. Given that there were differing amounts presented to the public, I also asked at the last Board of Ed meeting, what budget item did the $2,500 for insurance for this trip get pulled from? Please be advised, I'm not just asking for myself, but for members of the community. Even the Montgomery News said that they can't get answers. So I would wonder why. On January 3rd, the public was asked to request supporting data from the board president's guest speaker, who has not complied with the request for additional data. What is the board president going to do about this? Please ask Professor Rubenstein to comply to sincere requests for the information he promised to provide. Why did the Montgomery contingent have to use taxpayer dollars for this trip, and the Delran representatives did not expense the district for airfare and transportation costs? I possess a document from Delran regarding this. Again, why isn't Rutgers paying these travel costs given their investment in and benefit from this initiative? And where is the follow-up about the South Africa excursion? Haven't heard anything on that. There are many concerns that our tax dollars are being spent unwisely and they need to be spent on academics for students' benefits. Again, what is the policy on communication with the community for people concerned that the same issues keep getting raised in person and via email? Please understand that we can't get responses to our questions and comments, so they keep being raised. And if meeting minutes can include questions from the public comment, why they can't include the answers given during the meeting? The minutes say in the response, Mary McLaughlin and Dr. Spence Wallace addressed the concerns and questions from the public. There's no actual response in the minutes. With regard to members of the board, how much time do I have left? Oh, well. I've raised some questions here tonight. At the last board meeting, questions were raised during public comment. At the end, the board president said there weren't any submitted this evening. I hope that doesn't happen tonight. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Gabriela. I live in Belmead. First, I would like to address the conduct of the board president at the February 28th meeting. While I was addressing the board during public comments, you kept speaking over me. The fact that you were more upset about the fact that I mentioned Mr. Todd's name rather than shown concern for the board vice president's action that I was addressing is alarming. And I just want to remind you that policy 0167 does not allow you to censor my speech. I can mention names nowhere in the policy that say that I can't mention people's names. For the district goals, one of the goals, number 4, is communication. It states, improve all methods of communication to deliver clear and transparent district messaging to all district stakeholders by leveraging social media platforms, the website, email blasts, to increase engagement with the community. You have not provided any communication since December. All our emails, no matter what subjects, are ignored and not answered. All we are getting is automated responses, so therefore the community is resorting to offer requests, and seems like we're gonna have to follow up even more. And my final point to so-called labor management collaborative initiative. Stakeholders have been asking you for details about South Africa Democratic Teachers Conference since December, and you are appearing to us as if we were asking you about your vacation trip. In fact, in December 13 meeting, Ms. McLaughlin stated, upon return, staff will share their experiences, and you, Mrs. Spencer-Willis, said you would provide information in February newsletter. How we can count on your word or anything that you state? Why have you not provided statements about the conference details? What was discussed? Did you represent teachers? Did you represent the union or taxpayers? Why did we have to spend $10,000 on it and districts like Delaware traveled there for free? What is this collaboration involving? We would really like more information on it. Thank you.
Before you put the timer on, would you please ask a question? Can you put the program of study on the screen so everybody can see? Because my English is not that good, so sometimes board member may confuse. They ask me, what do you talk about? You know, is that possible?
Ms. Dong, you can state your name and address.
Oh, sorry.
Right,
Okay.
thank you.
My name is Wei Ping Dong. I live 14 Lim, Skiman. 14
Thank you.
Lim place of Skiman. Is it possible? No? It's okay.
We don't have access to that at
Oh,
this time, but
Okay. Yeah.
continue with your comment.
Yeah. Once, I think before last meeting, I asked the superintendent how our school administrator make our program of studies. So your answer is the state standard will dictate something, right? Dictate something, blah, 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 right? But once I researched online, I found that the lady who is in the either state board or something, she mentioned that individually district, they can make their own program of studies. So state standard is just a minimum level for the request. So would you please make a more detail how our school make our program of studies? That means when you review, right? Every year you mention you review, right? There have a lot of topics, we have a lot of courses. Do you individually review each of them? Especially, you try to make a big change. It's really funny. When I reviewed the previous board meeting, I found a talk that I think is him. At that time, he's still the board member. And then Mrs. Gallard, very excited, said, "Oh, we open English literature and English AP, English, at both 11 and 12. She's so happy that we have this change, right? But this year, 2023 to 24, suddenly for the 11th grader, they only can have AP literature. The AP English for 12th grade,
So that's why I want you to put the program on the screen so everybody know what I talk about. That means, as I understand it, for 11th grade, you can't take AP English anymore. You only can take AP Literature. The AP English, you only can take it in 12th grade. So you understand? So instead of both, you suddenly change. Our parents doesn't know anything about the change. And it's occur on the program. So when I ask some other parents, they even don't know what's going on. So that's my concern. Can you make us some details about how we make the change and how you decide, especially AP physics, AP calculus BC, right? The issue I bring up here.
Time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Charles Horn. I live in Skillman, New Jersey. Just a couple of questions around the budget. Having worked in a corporation for over 20 years prior to going into real estate, we didn't always increase our budgets every year. We examined our budgets depending upon the economy, and I see that the school budget is going up again. I'd like to just make a general comment. People throw the word stakeholders around pretty freely. There's only one important group, and that's the shareholder, which are the taxpayers. So my question is, who represents the taxpayers throughout this whole budgeting process? The other thing I noticed too, it looked like 60% goes to salaries, 20% goes to benefits, and then there was a benefit increase of over 14%. So I just want to make sure that I understand that really the total compensation of the average employee within the school district is really the 60%, or 3/4 of compensation goes towards salary, and 1/4 goes towards benefits. And so 14% in a single year for an increase in benefits seems to be quite exorbitant. And so I'm just curious if the board or the business manager looks at figuring out ways to make the educational process more efficient and not necessarily just increase the budget because, you know, you're allowed 2% every year. You got to remember that you're spending taxpayer money, and taxpayers are going through tough times right now, and there doesn't seem to be any empathy for the taxpayers. So I'd like to see what your thoughts are on that. Thank you.
I just try to...
Please state your name and address.
My name is Han. My address is François Sigurman. I just try to support my friend's topic just now. So what she said is, before in the past years, Montgomery High School, if the student want to go to advanced English courses, typically they take AP English at junior year and AP Literature at senior year. So we all know that AP Literature is much more difficult than AP Language. If you check the difficulty level, AP Literature is about double the difficulty of AP English. That's why previous students think that taking AP English at junior year is better because junior year, we all know that it's the busiest year over the 4 years at Montgomery High School. But I think maybe from next year or something, Montgomery High School suddenly changed the sequence that if the student want to go to advanced English, they have to take AP English at senior year and move AP Literature to junior year, and the student do not have the choice. So this is, I think this is what she said, that actually from almost all the previous students, I said that taking AP Literature at the senior year is better, but Montgomery High School moved this course to junior year, and the students, like our kids, do not have choice. So we don't have any previous, we don't know what the reason to do this, and yeah, that's why we're here to ask. Thank you.
Any other citizen submitting public comment at this time? Thank you. So our first public comment, new business of the board, is now closed. Thank you for your questions and comments. Superintendent McLaughlin, would you please reply to those questions that you're able to at this time?
Well, everything about the course of studies is really high school specific. Have you met with the director and the principal and the supervisors regarding that? Because I don't know of any changes to the AP courses for this upcoming year for prereqs. Like, I can't speak to when that change occurred. It hasn't occurred recently.
Can I say it or not?
So, the Superintendent McLaughlin, may the board submit that follow-up with Ms. Gomes' question specifically about the program of studies, because I think her question was, how is the program of studies communicated to the parents? Because her opinion is that parents, generally speaking, are not aware of the specific changes that take place from year to year. So if you can provide follow-up with the high school principal to be able to provide that appropriate response to Ms. Dawn, I think that's what she's looking for. At least that was my interpretation of what she's specifically looking for.
Can I suggest that she can also email it in what Chinese or whatever language you want, we can translate it, right? Would that make it easier to understand? Because
I'm not having any difficulty understanding Ms. Dawn when she speaks. No. No, I can understand her when she speaks. Thank you. But duly noted, board member Carlson.
And then I cannot answer the cost of the actual number of the trip to South Africa. I'll have to check with the business administrator. And what line item the insurance is taken from, that's also a business office question. And why isn't Rutgers paying? I cannot answer that either. And as for, I know that the principals did share outs of the trip with their staff. I can't speak for the board. If there's going to be a share out about the trip.
Yes.
And I think that that's.
Yeah, so the share out for the community member that spoke about from the board's perspective, share out with the community of the trip, that will take place at our March 28th meeting.
And I think Mr. Horn asked about the budget, who represents the taxpayers. There are 9 Board of Education members that are taxpayers that represent, and they sit on all the committees that are very involved with the budget, especially the OFF committee.
Not necessarily taxpayers here in Montgomery. You're for some of these other people are not.
Point of order, because there isn't an exchange among the board members
you're
and
talking
the
about
public.
Every elected board member lives in Montgomery.
Yeah, just for point of clarification, every elected board member is a resident of Montgomery.
It is a requirement of the eligibility to run for a local board of education for that individual to be a resident of the community in which they will serve.
I stand corrected on the board.
can I part of the revenues were going to be used to not increase future taxes so much. You said something about that? That would support.
Yes, so the additional $1 million that we received in state aid, we are not just increasing things in the budget, we are using it to keep the tax levy lower, not just this year, but in the next 2 years, 3 years.
And I just wanted to add too, during our OFF deliberations last Friday, one of the main drivers for the increase in benefits is healthcare across the state. It's about 15.6%. It has gone up. And our business office had looked for ways to keep that healthcare cost minimal, at the most minimal that we can, by having our broker really look into all the other possibilities of healthcare insurance that we can provide. And as a committee, you know, I thought, I'll speak for myself, not, you know, as a member of the committee, I thought they did a diligent work in trying to figure out what would work best for our employees and also not increase our, you know, our stake in that too high. But it's a 15.6% increase across the board in the state of New Jersey for health benefits.
And this
For
increase,
state employees.
right, thank you, First VP Franco Herman. This increase, as stated, is not unique to Montgomery or New Jersey, for that matter. And I'll go into a little bit about that when I deliver the OFF committee report. Does that conclude your responses to all of the questions that were submitted? And the necessary follow-up, and we'll ensure that occurs. Okay, so thank you, Superintendent McLaughlin. Thank you, community, once again. So now we will transition to our committee and representative reports. Starting with the MTEA president, Mr. Jim Dolan.
Good evening, board members, community members, those tuning in virtually and in person. I'm looking forward to a day when it's not raining, snowing, or 30 degrees out for a board meeting. So if we could make that a priority, that would be wonderful. So hopefully we have spring coming soon. Just a couple things going on within our association and ways that we can help support the community that many of our members live in, and the community that obviously we work in. So I forgot to mention at the last board meeting the very great success that one of our initiatives had called Cuddle Up with a Book. It took place right here, right in back of this little forum here at the upper middle school. 466 cars drove by to pick up this little fun bag of goodies, including a book, a mug, and hot chocolate. So what a great way to read and celebrate the joy of reading with some hot chocolate, book and a bag of goodies. So that was really wonderful. It was probably the most successful one that we've had yet, and most participation. So 466 people driving up and participating. So really happy with that turnout and happy to connect with the community in that way. Going back, a lot of this started during COVID when driving by is all we could do. And it was so nice to see faces and smiles, and even people behind a mask at times smiling. So we're still continuing that and also doing other virtual and in-person events as well. Our next Read Aloud is going to take place on April 18th, and that is going to be a book titled Our Green City. So if anyone wants to sign up, we do advertise on our social media through our PTAs. They're happy to oblige and put some of our events on there and share those out as well. And also we have a mailing list that parents can sign up for. So Our Green City, you might see a connection. April is Earth Day on April 22nd, so it does connect with that. We do have another giveaway right in the back here in April. The date to be determined, giving away a little basil planter, so we'll share more about that the next time, the next board meeting. Also in the back, there's so much that happens here at Upper Middle School, it seems. There is our little free library right back in that corner. So it's kind of like one of those newspaper machines. I used to put the quarter in and get the newspaper. I don't know if it's a quarter anymore. But this free library is literally free. So you can drive by, you can drop off a book, you can take a book, so it's open to our community to support it. And we helped start it off and kick in some books as well as an association.
Mr. Dolan, where is it located again?
Right on the curb. So if you're going out this way, there's a white box, so you'll see it. So right in the back of the upper middle school. Absolutely. Our food collection, Stacy Anderson, our Pride and Fast Chair, and I went to drop off the food. We had a truckload full, or SUV load full. In addition, we're having some food delivered to the food pantry. And I'll tell you, while we were there, it was a great experience because Stacy and I were able to see what it looked like. There were shelves stocked with food, so that's fantastic. We were able to see actually people coming and getting what they needed. And we also see a ton of volunteers that were helping, taking everything out of the boxes, organizing it, and preparing it for people to use. So it's such a great opportunity for our community to have a food pantry like this, and we're happy to just play a small role in that. The last is our Women's History Month collection continues until the end of the month, and that was the I Support the Girls organization. So we have collection boxes at all the buildings that our staff members are welcome to contribute to, and it will donate it to that organization to help in honor of Women's History Month. So that's kind of all the good things going around in the MTA to work with our community, in addition to what's going on in our schools. So thank you always for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. So next, our board member delegate and representative reports. All right, hearing none, we will move to our board committee reports. There will be 2 this evening, starting with our Facilities and Finance Committee report. So because of the absence of second VP Todd, who is the chair of that committee, as the alternate, I will be presenting that report this evening. It's a pleasure to serve in that role on your behalf. And the district lead for our OFF committee is our interim school business administrator, Mr. Tom Benanzi. And we conducted a virtual meeting on Friday, March 10th, starting at 8 a.m. Now, at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Benanzi reviewed the fiscal year 24 budget with the committee. Mr. Benanzi highlighted the increase in regular instruction, which included the need to catch up with our technology needs that were cut last year. Some laptops were purchased this year, which saved us approximately $50,000. Co-curriculars was the other area that saw a large increase. This was due to an increase in the pool of money available for stipends in the collective bargaining agreement with the MTEA. The tuition accounts increased just under 10%, and this line includes our out-of-district placements for students who attend private schools for the disabled, among other schools. There will be some additional placements coming next year. The employee benefit line is up by almost 15%, and this is the largest increase for next year because the insurance claims were high. Major drivers of the budget. The budget is labor intensive with 82% of the general fund budget consisting of salaries and benefits. Personnel adjustments in next year's budget. The high school requires a psychologist for the STAR program, which will hopefully keep more students in district instead of sending them to out-of-district private schools. The communications director, as stated earlier, was a position the board has requested for 2 years now. In addition, 3 safety coordinators will be hired district-wide. On the reduction side, we will be eliminating the part-time administrative position that Superintendent McLaughlin referenced. Then, we reviewed the full-day kindergarten staffing requirements for next year. We discussed the major capital maintenance projects. Mr. Benanzi emphasized that these projects are being funded through the maintenance and capital reserves and not through the taxes. Revenue source. The good news, as stated, is that our state aid increased over $1 million. Extraordinary aid was bumped up by $400,000 based on past figures. Local taxes are capped at 2%. However, the increase in the fiscal year 24 budget is estimated at 2.45%. This is because the state allows for an adjustment for healthcare cost increases, which results in a tax levy over the 2% cap. Fund balance increased by 42.26% because the funds for full-day kindergarten went to fund balance and will be utilized in fiscal year 24 budget. There were also reductions in debt service payments and special revenue. Overall, the total budget is up by 1.86%. The general fund tax levy calculation. As noted before, there is an adjustment for the increase in healthcare costs. The maximum healthcare adjustment that we are eligible for is approximately $1.9 million. The maximum tax levy permitted is $88,172,187. However, we're electing to use only $87,296,224 for a difference of $875,963. Say that real fast 3 times. That balance can be banked and can be used over the next 3 years to balance the budget. And finally, Mr. Benanzi reviewed the tax rate impact for both Montgomery and Rocky Hill. These amounts are calculated, as Acting Board Secretary Palumbo indicated, based on the assessed valuations of both municipalities. So the average school tax increase for Montgomery will be $196, and Mr. Benanzi calculated the Rocky Hill increase to be approximately $101. So health insurance renewals. Representatives from Brown & Brown, Mr. Finn, Mr. Tafori, Ms. Judilla, and Ms. Muscarella joined our meeting to discuss the health care insurance renewals. So Mr. Finn gave a presentation of Montgomery's employee benefits financial overview. There was an executive summary which provided numbers for budgetary purposes. The estimated cost for fiscal year 24 is $20.2 million. The stop loss quotes estimate that the increase may be $3.3 million to $4.3 million. Brown & Brown is recommending that the district leave the self-insurance model and join the Schools Health Insurance Fund, or SHIF, for medical and prescription. These two quotes are about $160,000 less than the budgeted cost for benefits of $20.2 million. Review, a careful and extensive review of the medical insurance marketplace for New Jersey Boards of Education. They stated they will try to provide the labor unions with the plan comparisons by this Friday, March 17th. Let's see. Brown & Brown is recommending that the district use the reserve in the amount of $1.2 million to offset the claims. Any balance left will be refunded to the district by Horizon. Any excess cost could be paid by budget savings with the move to SHIF. So to reiterate first, VP Franco Herman's statement earlier with regard to the budget and the specific consideration of the increase in healthcare costs. And Brown & Brown is a highly, reputable advisory entity whose recommendations the board takes seriously and obviously will impact our decisions as we move forward. So this concludes the OFF report. Do board members have any questions or comments at this time? And I will defer to Acting Board Secretary Palumbo and Superintendent McLaughlin to respond accordingly.
Can I ask
Sure.
you to repeat, I believe you said that, what is it called? SHIF? What's the SHIF? And what is?
Yeah, the Schools Health Insurance Fund.
And it's.
It's like a joint insurance
And
fund.
does that mean that, so prior to this, were our employees covered by Horizon, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that's changing?
Yes, we're self-insured,
Okay.
and Horizon is our plan administrator.
And they will still be?
No, it's going to be either Aetna or Oxford.
Right.
Okay.
Because the recommendation was to move from
Horizon.
the self-insured
because of
model,
Right.
right, to SHIF, the
Okay.
Schools Health Insurance Fund.
All right, and so it'll either be, you said Aetna or Oxford?
I think you're going to be able to choose, they'll be able to choose which one they want to go to.
Okay. And is it going to have a huge impact on, what coverage they're eligible for? And
No, it has to be equal to or better than what we currently have.
including vision, dental.
And I want,
Dental's not included because that's
Oh, it's
staying
separate?
with, staying with Verizon. So
and I want to add to, Brown and Brown have shared with us that they were working with Horizon in case there was a medical necessity for a current employee and shifting to a different provider would not allow them, Horizon would cover that.
So
until-
like a pre-existing
Right.
condition?
Or if
anything
they're
like
doing
that?
treatments or something
Right,
like that,
right.
and they have a doctor that they're using, I think they asked Horizon to cover it, to honor that, especially if they do,
Yeah.
have some
With
serious
something-
medical
something's
issues.
going on.
Correct.
I just want to add to the report. So Brown and Brown shared with us in their report, like the increase in premiums in New Jersey from like 15.1% to 15.6%. And that is high, but we see that trend continuing. So they believe that the fiscal year 24 increases will be an additional 13%. So it's interesting, like this is serious decision-making for boards of education, throughout the state. So Brown and Brown shared with us that 74% of New Jersey's boards of education are insured with pooled medical risk bearers, the SHIP. Okay. So then there was an explanation about the estimated savings to be anywhere upwards of $4 million, which is really significant for a district like Montgomery that relies heavily on the tax levy for its budgets. So great questions. Any other questions to be submitted by board members at this time? Okay, great. And then the second report is the officers' report, and it's brief this evening. The Board of Education would like to extend our gratitude for Montgomery Township Education Association, and specifically Ms. Stacy Anderson, is that correct, Mr. Dolan, for coordinating the Read Across America efforts. As a former English teacher, I really value how important literacy is in our lives. It's an essential skill set that we carry with us, even when students are performing in other content areas, and just when they're conducting themselves generally as adults. So I had the pleasure of reading, as I promised, to Ms. Maxwell and Mr. Franny's fourth grade class at Village Elementary School. And I promised the students that I would give them an individual shout out. So here goes. And I do apologize. I promised them. So I would like to thank them for their excellent questions. For the book that I read. What was the title of that book? Second BP Talk, because we read the same book.
The Youngest Marcher.
Yes. So that's Yash, Jace, Harmon, Kieran, Venetia, Liev, Varvara, Michael, Lexi, Natia, Gavin, Ashmi, Delano, Evelyn, Iman, Liam, Aki, Saisha, Ansh, Advita, Josh, and Marcos. You were excellent, and thank you for your participation and for challenging me with those great questions. And I also would like to take the time to show the community. And second VP Todd, would you please share with the class that you read to in what grade?
Yes, so I was at Village Elementary, room 313, Miss Pigmataro and Miss Caprio's class, fourth grade class.
Do you hear that, Miss Maxwell and Mr. Franny? I am jealous because that class had an envelope, an inter-office envelope full of thank you letters, right? Right. So they did an excellent job. So thank you again. Thank you for your indulgence, everyone. It is at this time that I recommend the Board of Education members to review the minutes of the February 28th executive session meeting and business meeting, as well as the draft of our March 28th meeting, business meeting agenda. We will vote on those at that meeting. Board Member Carlson?
A motion to review again.
We have a motion to review a hip case on the floor.
Do you have this specific?
Do we have the number? The number of the hip case, Board Member Carlson?
239-834 underscore UMS underscore 1219-2022.
Would you like to make a motion? What is the motion for?
It's a hip
State
case.
that you'd like to make the motion, what would you like to make the motion for, and include the hip numbers.
Okay, that hip number, I'd like to make a motion to reverse.
Reverse the decision. Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion fails.
Thank you. And now it's time for our second public comment, specific to action agenda items only. The instructions are, members of the public are allotted one opportunity to address the board regarding the action agenda items for up to a maximum of 3 minutes during this period of the meeting per speaker. All comments or questions must be directed to the board chair. The board chair may be referring issue to the superintendent if the particular issue has not been handled through the appropriate chain of command at the schools within the school district before coming to the board for a response. All responses may be answered at the end of this session. Yes.
Hi, Gabriela Simon. I wanted to talk about 2.3, approval or participation in high school athletics for students. First of all, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for this. But I also would like to ask you if you're going to consider homeschoolers participating in athletics. I know Hillsborough just approved it, I think last month, and I was wondering if that was something on your radar, or since they are kids in a district and their parents also pay for taxes. So that's one. And 3.3, approval of resolution school district accountability. So I would like to ask board to consider adding supplementing documents to be presented to provide for the trip or the conference, wherever whoever is traveling. The purpose of this document will be to share purpose of the conference for further enhancing fiscal accountability of the school district, basically avoiding all this stuff that happened with the South Africa trip. So instead of, if you're gonna vote on it or approving travel, like, so the public would have more information about it. Why they're traveling, what's the benefit, and such. Self-explanatory. And then 3.4, establishment of maximum dollar limits for professional services. The line with the educational services consultants, it's over $1 million. Was wondering if the public could see the list of consultants, so we can see if you can tell us where to find it, or if there is such thing, so we could see who are these consultants to the school. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or a second public comment at this time? Hearing none, so our second public comment is closed. Superintendent McLaughlin, would you please respond?
So 2.3 is aligned with the NJSIAA regulations and the law that says that any child that resides in the district and the parents place them at a school that is a school for a child with disabilities, that they have the right to participate in interscholastic sports. So that's what that approval is. We do not have that same policy for homeschool children. Homeschool children are not permitted to participate in any school activities. And what was the second one?
Is that something that we can review as a school to consider? Because the community member mentioned that Hillsborough just approved a different way of handling homeschoolers. And I know we've had homeschoolers come up here in the past to share some of the things that they're dealing with. So perhaps it's something we could review and consider.
But that would have to go to policy.
Okay. Michelle?
Got it.
Thank you, Board Member Dowling, for your copious note-taking.
I'm trying to stay on top of it.
Under accountability.
Oh, that would be communities, I think, detail. Right, every time, there is a list at the board meetings where people are, their names and where they're going, and the amount is on that travel and... This is an accumulation? Yeah, workshop. This is just a total amount. I could ask Mr. Venanzi about exactly what those numbers are from. Actually, Mr. Kimoma, do you know?
The numbers that are listed here,
Yeah.
it's based on what it currently is, and
What we
possibly
have, what we've spent.
Right.
Right.
And I
Okay.
think these are listed at the reorganization meeting. They list all the consultants.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the one before that. The PD.
Oh, the PD? That comes straight from the budget.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the question was, is there more detail? And every board agenda, there is a travel list
Right.
that we vote on that is public knowledge.
This is required
This is
from the
just-
county, that you have
right.
to show how much is in your budget for professional development.
Right. And yet all of the list of consultants are annually presented at a board meeting.
So the list of consultants, that was your last question, right?
Yeah, that's what we just said, the list of consultants
It was
is
travel
usually
and
done.
consultants, right? But I thought last year.
No, travel is every month typically. So like if I'm going somewhere, my name will be on a spreadsheet with the total amount for the whole year requested and how much it's been spent, yeah.
I've seen that, but I thought last year the list of consultants was detailed that we got.
Correct, because there was an error in last year's.
We were
Typically, it's only the people that are currently under like a PO or being utilized. The list presented last year was different than any other list because it gave from the beginning of time anyone. So, for example, every single employee that was used as a vendor or every single board member from whenever that list started was on there. Because if you're going to go to a workshop, you're listed as a vendor and things of that nature. So that was a very comprehensive list, but typically it's very exhaustive.
I wonder if there's a compromise between everything and nothing, you know?
No. Every year it should be the current people. Like anybody that we've used for the current year and plan to use for the following year will be on that list.
So we'll
And that
see
is
them.
done usually in June, right?
It's only the active vendors.
Active vendors.
Okay, so we'll see them yet this year.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent McGough, Acting Board Secretary Palumbo, thank you. So at this time, we move to our action agenda items. So I'd like a motion to approve the action agenda items 1.1 to 4.3.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call for Secretary Palumbo.
Mr. Carlson.
Here.
Yeah.
Ms. Dowling.
Yes.
Ms. Franco Herman.
Yes.
Ms. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Spina.
Yes.
Mr. Todd.
Yes, with the exception of 2.2, which I've seen.
Ms. Woolaka-Jernigan.
I just wanted to make a point in regards to the approval of the tentative budget. It is just that we're approving it for submission. And also, I think we have some action items that we've taken away from it, understanding the split on the kindergarten funds, what do they include outside of the salaries, as well as what that maintenance report is by the school, and as well as one of the community members mentioned what kind of educational initiatives we incorporated into the budget, right, to give back to the community the information around how we're spending those additional funds.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Then I vote yes.
Dr. Spence Wallace.
Yes, and I'll abstain from 4.1 C3.
Motion
Motion
passes.
carries very well. So we've reached the conclusion of our Montgomery Township School District Board of Education open public meeting this Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. We're appreciative to all those who participated, and we extend to you our gratitude. So should there be no objections, I'd like a motion to adjourn this day's open public meeting session at this time.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good night, everyone.
Drive carefully.